Welcome to this episode of the Think and Reform podcast. My name is Luke Saint, and today with me I have my brother David Saint, and today we're going to be discussing the Wes Huff, Billy Carson debate / debacle discussion and the fallout of everything that's going on. Wes Huff is a Christian apologist, and he is an expert in the field of ancient linguistics, if I understand correctly. I think we'll hear him introduce himself here in a second, and he'll be able to give his background better than I can give his background. And he is discussing biblical authorship and reliability, especially textual criticism and ancient mythology with somebody named Billy Carson. Now, Billy Carson is somebody who has made a living, and as you're going to hear, he's somebody who's made a living off of criticizing the Bible, criticizing the scriptures, and basically, if I could, use this phrase, conspiracy theorizing his way through the scriptures. Everything is a conspiracy theory. Everything is unoriginal. It was put there to control us. It was put there by people who want to control you and want to abuse you, and powerful people, and none of it's original. It was all taken and from other places. And the background of this is that Billy Carson has, since he's gotten rich off of this, he has finally been cornered by somebody who actually knows what he's talking about. And from what I understand, listening to the Joe Rogan interview, I think it was a Joe Rogan interview. Was it the Joe Rogan interview? They said somebody made a claim that Billy Carson was saying, hey, I want to debate somebody, and nobody wants to debate me, which I don't believe. I don't believe that for a second. I do believe there's a lot of people who are trying to get to Billy Carson because he's very popular on TikTok and all that kind of stuff. That's where he's made his living. And so a lot of so he was telling this podcast host Mark, hey, I've been wanting to debate, and then Mark stupidly believed him and said, oh, he wants to debate someone. And so he contacted Wes Huff, who had been responding to Billy Carson's videos on TikTok and on YouTube for the last couple of months. And he said, hey, I'm giving you 24 hours notice. Do you want to come out and talk to Billy, and we'll have a discussion? Wes Huff, the Christian apologist, said, yes, I'll come out, or I will be featured on your podcast. And the rest is apologetic history, as Billy Carson is systematically destroyed, and shown, not only destroyed, his arguments are shown to be fraudulent. Dov, you watched the discussion. What do you think?
Well, first of all, I had never heard of either of these guys. You've heard of Billy Carson before?
No, I've never heard of him.
I'd never heard of him either. I didn't know he was this very popular, apparently. I guess he does dabble in conspiracy theories within the Bible, and has a lot of followers, and is apparently pretty popular. Not only that we can see on his YouTube page and all that stuff, but according to him himself, he's a god among men, which probably we'll talk about in a little bit too.
We'll talk about that. You just address that real quick. You watched, he did some sort of response video because it was just such a bad beating.
I did watch that.
Okay, so it was such a bad beating on this podcast that Billy Carson was shown to be a fraud. And even Joe Rogan acknowledges that Billy Carson, I guess, released like a 3-hour post-debate.
After this debate. Well, first of all, it really wasn't set up to be a debate. Again, this is the research I've done in the past 24 hours. Okay. Right? So, I know the story not that well, but from what I gather, it really wasn't set up to be like a debate. See, this guy, Mark, who is the guy interviewing, or everybody's calling him the moderator, this never was set up to be like a formal type of debate. It was more supposed to be a discussion, and he told Billy Carson, I'm going to have this guy on Wes Huff. There's been a lot of stuff about him recently because he's talking about your stuff and he's rebutting a lot of your stuff. I'm going to bring him on and we're going to talk about it. So it really was never set up to be a formal debate in the sense. Mark isn't there to be a moderator in that sense. Mark thinks he's a part of the discussion, at least as far as what I can tell. But yeah, it was a thorough beating. but not in the sense of like they were actually debating each other. This was a thorough beating in about a 5-minute period.
Mm-hmm.
that Wes Huff just exposed this guy for being a fraud, liar, grifter in like a little 5, at most 10-minute window of this whole thing. Yeah. And it just apparently is just blowing up the internet.
Yes. Let me just play a little clip here, and so the listeners can get an idea of what went down. So here's Wes Huff introducing himself, and he starts to address Billy Carson's comments in the beginning and Billy Carson's claims. And remember, these claims that Billy Carson's has been making, he's been making these claims for years. And you're going to hear him switch gears and be like, "Oh, I meant a different thing." But what he's been claiming has been for years. It wasn't just a misstep on this episode.
Particularly in Greek and Coptic manuscripts, I actually have a facsimile. So I have a photocopy that was done by the British Library of Codex Sinaiticus that I work with in my office. So I have it here, and the only reason I asked for clarification is because I want to make sure that what I'm addressing is actually what you mean.
Gotcha.
And not addressing something else. Because the Codex Sinaiticus in particular is just it's a 4th century Greek manuscript. Mm-hmm. It comes from approximately between 325 and 350 AD. And its text of the Gospels reads almost identical to the modern Greek text that we develop translations from. So my curiosity is just simply in kind of exploring, when you say that it denies the crucifixion or that the crucifixion isn't there, I mean, I can go on right now, Codex Sinaiticus, and I can look up the end of, say, Matthew 27, where it has Jesus being crucified. And that's in Codex Sinaiticus, or, the John 19, or any of the other ones. So I think my confusion is that it doesn't read any differently. So actually, are you able to pull up a website with the viewers or listeners or whatever be able to see that?
Right now to make sure I have the version that I'm looking at.
Where was that piece
I found
discovered?
the text where I was referencing, actually. I was misquoted. I misquoted there. It's the Gospel of Barnabas.
Okay, so you get a small glimpse from that clip of how knowledgeable Wesley Huff is. This is his life. He has been studying this this is his career. This is his life. He's been studying this, and he's come across. He's now cornering Billy Carson, and Billy Carson, as you just heard, he just walked back one of his claims within the first few minutes of the debate, right? And so he just said, "Oh, I misquoted. I meant the Gospel of Barnabas." But he's been saying for years, as Wes Huff later says, "Well, hang on a second. This isn't just a misquote. You've been saying for years it's the
Sinai Bible.
The Sinai Bible, right?
Right.
You're saying it's the Sinai Bible. You've been saying for years, and now you're like, oh, I've been misquoting for years, And so that's why, Dove, I think you said he's a grifter.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think this exposed him as someone who's just really just out there doing it for money. Because I don't know if you'll play clips later on in the debate, but you'll see I keep calling it a debate. It really wasn't. Like what you're hearing right now.
It's an informal debate. It's an informal debate.
You could call it that, but this is like a discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Like the part of the whole reason this is so popular and people are following it, I think, is partly because it was hardly a debate and you lost this badly. It wasn't even
right.
Wes Huff knows his stuff, right? But I think people are really kind of shocked at the lack of knowledge of that this guy has of his Billy Carson on his own, because he just brought up, actually in the code it says that it does have the crucifixion in there, right? Yeah. You would think you would get some type of rebuttal back from Billy Carson after that, but it's like, wait a minute, no, that alone, all that was okay. That destroyed my argument. I'm moving on to something else.
Yeah.
That is kind of what's shocking. It's like you've been doing this for years. You say you have researchers helping you with your research, and it takes this. This is all it takes.
Yeah.
And that's what I think people are seeing, and they're like, "Wow." Not only does he has no idea what he's talking about, no idea. It's a grift. It's for money. And we can talk about that later too.
Well,
but, yeah.
like I said before, like talk about the video, the response video he put out, the 3-hour-long response
Right.
video. So you took the time. See, here's the thing:
Yeah,
I would have never taken the time to watch this guy, dribble and bubble over like, well, I was trapped or what have you, and that's
pretty bad.
totally not the case. He totally knew what was happening. The only one who was given short notice was, and this is a great point that was brought up by Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan said, "Listen, what I know about. You can wake me up at 4:00 in the morning. Just give me a minute to catch my thoughts here as I'm waking up from our REM sleep, and I will be able to expertly tell you things about comedy and martial arts, no problem."
Right. Probably other things too.
Right.
Yeah.
At 4:00 in the morning, if
For
you roll
sure.
me out of bed, and this guy had more than 24 hours notice. Billy Carson had more than 24 hours notice that, hey, an expert is going to be coming on here to discuss with you. And he's like, well, I wasn't given enough time, all that kind of stuff. And Joe Rogan's like, no, you had enough time. The experts don't need time to talk about the things that they're experts.
You hardly even need... What Joe Rogan was saying, all I need time is just to wake up, and that'll take me, 60 seconds?
Yes. Right. Exactly. It's a great point.
You should need nothing.
Yes.
I mean, you have this following, you have these people, you say how much
saying this for years.
You boast about yourself.
Right. And so in that 3-hour video...
And all it takes is just a question.
In that 3-hour video, you said he showed his true colors.
For sure. And he shows his true colors in this debate as well.
Okay.
Later on in the discussion, he shows, as his arguments get easily just rebutted by Wes Huff, because Wes Huff just knows his stuff. Now, you'll see that he turns into just your common leftist.
Yeah, right.
Because he starts going down this road of, well, what God did in Deuteronomy is brutal. So there, haha, take that, Christian.
Yeah.
And it gets, no one's really going to watch this full thing, but it gets the part where it really gets frustrating is the host Mark starts to really interject with just all kinds of dumb nonsense.
Yeah, we'll get to him in a second, but talk about his true colors in his rebuttal video, where the things he was saying. Talk about that.
Some of the things he was saying.
Because I didn't watch this video.
He just got over a sickness, and that's why this happened, which is true. He actually was, but it was an excuse he was making.
Okay.
And he said, talking about the Sinai Bible and stuff like that. He kind of caught me off guard with that, but I was sick. I literally almost just died a week ago. That was one of his excuses.
Well, yeah, that kind of stuff makes me forget everything I know too.
No, yeah, it absolutely does not. He started blaming his followers. He was saying he started boasting about how much money he made. I make this, I make that.
Blaming his followers?
Anybody who's not necessarily his followers, but people who are 9 to 5. He actually brought that up. He said, "You all who are coming against me, people who are telling me that I'm a liar now after this."
Yeah.
Which is just normal people,
right?
Right. Watching him get, destroyed incredibly easily. See, that's part of it too. It's like it was hardly a debate because he just flopped so quickly and so easily just by a simple question or two.
Yeah, right.
And
the Emperor's wearing no clothes.
Yeah, if people kept comparing it to a Drake meltdown, apparently Drake had this big meltdown.
Oh, okay.
And so, but he went on this 3-hour diatribe and accused Wes Huff and all these people of being part of this really worldwide conspiracy that is trying to bring him down.
Okay.
He boasted about his money. He said, "I make this much, you don't, and I basically have more authority because I made this money and you didn't. These are just 9 to 5."
So it's about the money. It's about the money.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And so he just went down this rabbit hole of just digging his grave even further. It was almost like I thought of Will Smith when he had his, let's call it a meltdown, when he slapped Chris Rock. It's like, what's wrong with this guy? Right.
Oh, okay.
And I remember in an interview before, Will Smith was around a table, this was a couple years before, with a lot of other Hollywood guys, and he was saying, I'm going to be so popular, right, that no woman would ever want to leave me or say no to me.
Okay.
Right? And everybody around him's going,
it's a little insecure.
Right. They're going, that's what you think.
Right.
And I think that's what was happening with him. He started to break down because he started to realize, wait a minute, I'm doing this for popularity. I'm doing this for money. And if I don't have that,
then what's this all about?
I am nothing.
Yeah. Right.
I am. So he went on about how he's just so much better than everybody else.
Okay. And didn't he bring race into it? Like, that I was an ignorant black man or something like that?
He did. He said, you thought I was just an ignorant black man, but I actually know what I'm talking about.
Oh.
It's one of these things where Right. You don't have to say that.
Right.
Why are you bringing that up?
Right.
Like the whole thing just kept getting worse and worse. Every reason he brought up was just in anger, frustration, and insecurity in who he is.
Mm-hmm.
And it was
got worse and worse.
Yeah, he exposed himself worse in the rebuttal to this video.
Okay.
And it was what the main thing was that it's like, dude, you lost unofficial. You lost an unofficial.
Yeah.
It's like, chill out. This is not a big deal.
Right.
And
well, for him it is. For him it is a big
right,
deal.
but it really isn't. But for him it is.
Okay.
That's the point.
Okay.
For him it is because a couple questions destroyed his entire credibility.
Okay.
And that's enough for him to not feel like a man anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I got from it anyway.
Well, he's not a man. I mean, just full disclosure, he's not. But
no, he's a liar and a fraud.
He's a liar and a fraud.
Profits very much from his lies.
Right.
And his him being a fraud and a grifter.
Right.
And he profits huge off that. So that's his whole livelihood.
Yeah.
That is being brought down by just a couple questions.
So what we were talking about this morning was in all of this, you had a frustration.
Yeah.
And the frustration was not necessarily with Billy. Of course, we're going to have people like that. And the frustration was not with Wes Huff, whom the internet is now starting to call Wes Buff.
Right. I wish I had his hair.
He's got really nice hair.
That's pretty slick.
Your frustration was with the host, Mark.
Right.
Now I'm going to play a clip.
Not just me.
Yeah, not just you. Okay, so this is apparently a thing. This is like a subplot to this whole thing. Was that I haven't really seen this before, but when I searched this video and I listened to it, I listened to the full debate without the moderator.
Right.
There apparently was a demand for that, which is really weird. Now, I mean, he wasn't a moderator. I mean, he was an unofficial moderator. This is his podcast. Mm-hmm. He had Billy on as a guest, and he had Wes on as a guest. He did not know Wes. He was at Billy's wedding. Billy only had 15 people at his wedding, so he was a very close friend. They're not friends anymore. Billy tried to serve.
He did.
He served him papers at 2:30 in the morning, going up ring cam, at nighttime. He's serving him papers, and then he tried to serve Wes Huff papers.
Yeah, he did, and the editor of the video.
Right?
Yep.
So he's trying to get people, try to cease and desist, gag orders and all that kind of stuff.
Lawsuits over this.
Right,
yeah,
right. Which
incredible.
This is telling, and Wes actually Huff hit one of his points is like if you hadn't have done that, this would have gone over a lot smoother, and maybe people would have forgotten. You could have had your platform, but no, the more big of a deal you make this, the more big of a deal it is.
Yeah.
So so this host Mark, he's really good friends with this guy Billy, and but throughout the debate or the discussion, this guy Mark keeps interjecting his own completely irrelevant, like you said, he thinks he's part of the discussion,
right?
But the internet's kind of like, yo, dude, move. Hey Mark, can you move out of the way? I'm trying to watch the debate, and he keeps interjecting. I'm going to play a clip here of what it sounds like, and so we're I mean, even Billy and the content of what Billy's talking about is even superior to what Mark's about to talk about, right? So Mark jumps in, and this is the frustration, Dov. I'll let you talk about it after we listen to this clip of our frustration with the Evangelly-fish culture is about to be embodied right here. So let's take a listen to
example.
when Mark, the moderator, Mark, or the host of the show, jumps in and gives his opinion. So let me just say this too. When I listened to the debate, I didn't know that someone had taken the moderator out. I figured it out later. But Dov watched the full 2 hours. I watched an hour and 10 minutes. So somebody went through, and apparently there was a demand for this because it was so bad. The moderator was so bad. There was a demand from the internet, get this guy out of it. I just want to listen to the discussion as is. 50 minutes of the 2 hour discussion were removed because this guy just kept talking and steering the conversation away from the important things and going into the modern Evangelly-fish. Like, well, what about this and what about that? And it's like, yo, dude, would you knock it off? So here's a quick clip of him talking about his quote unquote.
Talking about whatever. Yeah.
Talking about whatever.
Yeah, who knows what he's talking about.
It's a completely irrelevant. And here he goes. He jumps in.
Yeah, sure.
If it was only for the Old Testament, I would have a hard time following a lot of stuff. For me, like what you said, putting the boots on women and stuff, it was when Jesus came that when they were literally like, oh, if a woman, you can just accuse a female of having an affair and murder her, and that's like okay. That he was he just reminds me of anyone that basically challenged everything. And people would say that it didn't contradict what's in the Old Testament, but however people were interpreting it, they were believing that they were following the Bible to women can't do this, you stone them if they have an affair or if they're accused of having an affair. And Jesus, as we know the famous scene when they were about to stone her, he's like, he who hasn't sinned cast the first stone, basically saying no one's perfect. And was the first one that I know of that started like speaking to other tribes and other countries that people weren't supposed to, like they were so racist and prejudiced. And he
so I mean, that's just a clip there of the podcast host derailing the conversation away from the interesting and pertinent points and going into but my modern day evangelical questions that should be addressed in Sunday school, but I don't know, whichever church or wherever studying he's done, these are grade school, Sunday school objections, and he's bringing it into this very very specific discussion about textual criticism and ancient Middle Eastern mythology. And what are we doing talking about this amidst this discussion? Dov, your frustration because you listened to him. I didn't, thankfully.
Well, I did for a while.
Okay.
And it turned out that I'd never pressed the, I was listening on my phone, and you can skip ahead by double tapping the.
Yep.
I've never done that more in my entire life. Because I just kept going until Wes started speaking.
So apparently this guy kept interjecting.
And that was normal. People in the comments, if you go down, they will say, I've never pressed double tap that many times. Like it was a really, really big problem.
The moderator mark was out of place at times, but also be kind and gracious for him to allowing Wes to upload the entire debate on his channel.
Yeah.
Use me as this moderator was insufferable on a level we can't begin to comprehend. Button 17,000.
And 635 replies just to that. Yeah.
Oh my word. The moderator is like how it might be if technology allowed your dog to talk for the first time and explain the world. Okay, so
it gets really, really bad later on too, because there's a point where Wes is explaining to him, and he's like, yeah, but how would that work or whatever? And Wes literally goes into explaining context, right? And he talks about how the Bible is written for you, but not to you. It was written to a different audience than you, right? But it was written for you.
Right.
And so he was trying to explain to him how context works. Right? And then every time he was...
This is to the moderator now.
Yeah, to the moderator. He's talking to Mark now.
Right.
Mark is the moderator. And
because Billy gets up and leaves...
Yeah, well, this was when Billy was still there, actually.
Okay.
This is more a little bit later, but then he's like, okay, well, here's how this works. So you have to take things into perspective with blah, 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 right? And he would get in about 10 seconds of it, and Mark would then interrupt him and go, yeah, I hear you, but what about, see, here's how what I feel is, and he goes on for like 5 minutes.
Right.
Then Wes Huff gets back on, goes back to the original.
Yeah, right. We're back on track again.
Wes brings it back, and he interrupts him again 10 seconds in. He's trying. I'm like, dude, he's trying to tell you it was really bad, and that's why people were getting super frustrated with it. And that's why they were calling for, could we just cut this guy out completely and have just these two talking?
Right.
And someone did.
Right, someone did.
And I wonder, I'm sure it has a lot of views because people are like, I'm going to this other video. Because of they just wanted him knocked out of that, pretty much.
Right.
But it was really, really tough to listen to whenever he started talking.
First comment on the moderator, infamous Wes Huff versus Billy Carson debate, full debate with moderator removed. The first comment is, never thought the words moderator removed could be so sweet. You removed the moderator and turned a near 3-hour live stream into a 1 hour and 10-minute show, LOL.
Yep.
Oh my word! Thank you for removing Mark. LOL. He seemed to mean well, but he did a lot of pontificating. It was out of place with his responses. Yeah, that's
this
very
true.
true.
To me, his responses were terrible.
Yeah. Well,
but I think I actually thought to myself, this guy's dyslexic or something. He actually said to Wes, he told him, he said, "Look, I have to interrupt.
Okay.
I have to.
Okay.
Right? Because if I don't ask my question, I'll forget it.
Okay.
So I have to interrupt and ask it now."
Okay.
He actually said that to
All right.
Wes. And so I'm like, this is, okay, how to not have a discussion 101.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
Don't interrupt people.
Right.
So it was really insufferable
Or
in that
write it
sense.
down.
But
He's right in front of a
that's
computer.
not
Just write it
necessarily-
down.
Yeah, that's not the reason I would think he's like the evangelical community, and I'm tying him into that. Not because of his inability to have.
Yeah, but your frustration comes
discussion.
more from his defense of Billy Carson
Yes,
in
that's
front
right.
of Wes Huff and talk
right.
about that, because I think that's probably the most important takeaway. This is
Okay.
the most important sub takeaway from this discussion. Obviously, the most
Yeah.
important takeaway is that Billy Carson is a fraud, and that Wes Huff,
we don't need to say that.
Right.
Watch it for yourself,
Yeah, right.
and you'll see the subsequent meltdown
right.
from Billy Carson confirms it.
Yes.
But yeah, there's some that's correct. What do you call them? Conversations,
yeah.
subplots.
Yeah.
That you could take from this, and I think one of them was because Billy Carson got up and left then, not because he was upset or anything, but I guess he had somewhere to
He
be.
probably was upset, but I mean,
Right.
yeah, but not the reason given was not because he was like, "I'm done with this." He had to go somewhere else.
Wes had a discussion then with Mark towards the end.
Okay.
For about 20 minutes, they were talking with each other, and Mark kept talking about how Billy's such a good guy. So this is where I start to your discernment is peak stupidity.
Okay.
And he said, because Billy, he's a really good guy. I've known him for years. He's a really good, and I didn't want him to feel bombarded
Right. Right.
by Wes Huff,
Right.
who's
right.
the nicest dude on the planet.
Right, right.
And has the patience of a saint listening to you mumble and jumble through nonsense. You can read that in the comments too, on how people were just absolutely impressed with Wes because he could just sit there and look at the screen like he's interested.
Right.
Right. And then as soon as Mark was done speaking, he would go back to something Billy brought up. He would just completely ignore everything he said. He would transition it with something like, "Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I'm going to address, whatever." But they spoke a little bit after the debate, and that's where that came up. He's a really good guy. I didn't want to make him feel bombarded. I didn't want to...
His fragile little ego, yeah.
Or whatever. And it's like, what is with this weird space that you give to these... This guy is a liar. He lies for money.
Yeah.
Why does he deserve any type of...
Defense, yeah.
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 It's a really... But I thought, what, that is very much like...
Yeah.
Like when we... Like here comes a mom to kill her baby at the death camp. Well, we don't want to make sure you don't offend her.
Right.
Make sure you don't... We want to make sure that we... It's like, in what world are we starting to defend... And then we have to defend him from the likes of someone like Wes Huff.
Right.
It's
totally
that's what
totally
reminded
inoffensive. Totally inoffensive.
That's what reminded me of and why probably Billy Carson is friends with him, because he'll just lay over. That's what I was thinking. So I think the whole interview, and you could tell that Mark would jump in at times when Wes was making really great points that were completely destroying everything that Billy Carson was saying. I mean, Wes Huff nerded this guy into oblivion.
Yeah, right.
Just he's like, "Oh yeah, you knew it was over," and he's like, "Oh yeah, the codex, I have it right here." And he turns around. He turns around and he pulls it out. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, he's going to nerd him into the atmosphere."
Right.
And he did.
Yeah.
And Mark would chime in to try to smooth it over. It's like, smooth what over? They haven't even started talking yet.
Right.
It's like, this is that is what reminded me of. We've seen it when we're out at Lidditz, when we're talking to all those people.
Yeah.
It's like you are associating yourself with an incredibly wicked, evil man who lies to people for money.
Right.
That's what he is. He's deceptive, and now he's suing him.
Right. He's suing his friend Mark, not just suing
He's suing
Wes.
his best friend Mark.
Yeah.
It's like your discernment
Yeah.
is like that of the modern day
Yeah.
Christian. That's what was frustrating to me. Now it was frustrating, trying to, but we can do that. We have a skip button, right? So I can skip by all of him.
Right.
But at the end, when he was like doing that, it started to get this really like soft, like I don't want to.
Yeah.
Make sure Billy is comfortable and protection from Wes Huff.
Right.
And it's ridiculous nonsense, and we need to stop doing it.
Right.
It's we are way too nice, and I think this is just now. Not all people are like him, but I think it is a problem in the modern day. I would say Christian evangelical community.
Well, there's just no excuse. There's no excuse. You should allow this man to cross-examine and expose. If he's a fraud, then he's a fraud, right? You should allow that to happen. You don't need to soft sell this whole thing to the pagans. Okay, what needs to happen is that this man needs to be exposed. And if you cared about the truth, then you'd be like, okay, well, this is good. Yeah, Billy. Anyway, what's with that, Billy? Well, how could you do this? You betray me. I didn't betray you. You said you wanted to debate. Now, and now I'm wondering too why you've been saying the things that you're saying. All right, and you could still be the guy's friend if he leaves because he's offended that he's been exposed as a liar. That is a controlling relationship, and he's mad at you because you recognize that he's been a fraud and a grifter. Okay, if he gets mad at you, that is what, to use the terminology of today, that's a toxic relationship, and you should get out of it as soon as you can.
Well, Mark's full talker. He's married to a Muslim woman. It's like, this dude is not a Christian, man. He claims to be. It's like you've surrounded yourself with the worst relationships, and you're.
Yes.
Yeah. But I think that's indicative.
Right.
It's like you hang out with really bad people, and you think they're good people.
Right.
We saw it all through the COVID nonsense.
Right.
They're good people. They're just trying to do their best.
Right.
We don't believe the Bible when it tells us things. No, all who hate me love death.
Yes.
Well, okay, let's just not believe that.
Right.
And even with all just being exposed the way he was, I think it also exposed Mark too. It's like, it's like here he is. He's being exposed in the nicest, most humane way imaginable for being
kid gloves,
a liar and a fraud and a really bad guy.
Yeah.
And now you're seeing him really be a really bad guy by all these lawsuits.
Right.
He's actually acting upon his wickedness.
Yes.
And now he's serving lawsuits because his ego got hurt. And it's just this why do these guys, these evil, wicked men, get such I don't know, grace, kindness, and defense? Like they'll stand in front of people like this and be, I'm going to defend for you.
And who's the bad guy? It's Wes Huff.
Yeah.
He's the bad guy in all this, right? That's the implication.
Yeah.
The implication is that Wes Huff was somehow mean or somehow wrong for doing what he did.
Which was nothing.
Which was nothing.
Right.
Which was a
now,
service to mankind. Which was a service to all the people who give this knucklehead money.
Sure. And so, and I don't know if Mark personally would say that Wes, is like to blame for all this. I don't know what his response is. He very well could have said that. I know Mark did do a response to what's been happening. He talked about Billy Carson showing up at his house at 2:30 in the morning to issue him his, and you're thinking to yourself, wait, did he stay up?
What kind of friend does that?
Did he go to bed early and get up for this? Or did he stay up?
Well, I think from what I understand, it was a handwritten one.
2:30.
It was a handwritten one. So I think he was
daughter,
probably...
Mark's daughter heard it?
Yeah, Billy was probably up. I mean, it sounds like Bill was probably up all night going, how do I do this?
His daughter heard him or something. The doorbell rang.
Well, I mean, I thought it was a Ring camera footage.
Yeah, but it's also a doorbell that he rung.
Right, that he rung, right. But you're wondering, it's a handwritten one, so he was probably up all night writing it out or researching, how do I stop this? And was just like, here we go.
Who knows?
So
I'm mad at him for not recognizing who this guy is.
What we're seeing, I think, here is the conditioned modern day evangelical to be the first line of defense for good change. The first line of defense for exposing wickedness, from exposing wickedness, right? So you go out and you're like, okay, I'm going to expose wickedness in the culture. There is the first line of defense is the evangelical church in this country. They are the first ones to get in your way and say, no, don't do that, right? You can't even get to the pagans. The Christians, quote
Or
unquote.
something weird, do it, but don't be offensive while you do it.
Right,
Weird
and they
stuff
qualify,
like
and
that.
by the time you're done, you're not exposing evil anymore.
And you're not even being offensive at all. You're just stating fact. And it's, that offends him.
Right. That's but the first line of defense is I want to say evangelicals because I respect evangelicalism and the word evangelical too much. I'll say the Evangelly-fish, the people who claim to be evangelical, but they're just pew warmers and you know they don't think for themselves. They're just a Christian, quote unquote, on Sunday morning, and you know they're sending their kids to be educated by the state, and they don't teach their kids the Bible and all that kind of stuff, and they simply exist really to I mean the depth of their spiritual experience is to protect the pagans from true Christianity. And that's
it's really weird.
It's really weird.
Yeah,
it's really
bizarre.
weird because again, when we go out there to Lidditz every year, some of the most militant people against what we're doing are people who are in pastors' collars, right?
Yeah,
it's the
beautiful.
Methodists and a lot of those knucklehead Lutherans out there. With respect to some legitimate Lutherans out there, but it's the Methodists and UCC, the Catholics, you know, they're just out there and they're celebrating with these people and they're just telling them, hey, I'm a representative of the church. It's okay. Keep doing what you're doing. God approves. God loves you as you are. And their whole experience is to praise those who do evil and fight against those who do good.
Right, and
this is an example.
It's an example of being tread underfoot by man. You lost your saltiness. You know,
Right. Yes. Right.
Billy
Right.
can just walk all over this dude.
And that's what he's doing.
They've been friends for that long. It's like, how are they friends for that long?
Yeah. Right. You got
Just goes along with whatever.
Yeah,
It's with no pushback because apparently even the slightest bit of pushback from a knowledgeable person, completely destroys everything Billy was setting up. Apparently, it doesn't have to. You know, he's self-sabotaging too right now. Like,
right.
It actually didn't have to be this bad. Wes Huff is correct. Actually, Wes Huff said to him, I will do everything that this cease and desist says. Mm-hmm. If you fly over here and we'll talk about it live.
Okay.
He actually said that too.
Okay,
He's like, I'll give you it. Of course, he's not going to do it.
Right.
Because he's a coward. And everything in between. But it's interesting in this debate. If you call it halfway through, you'll see when Billy Carson just turns into your common everyday leftist.
Yep.
You know, well, the Bible condones slavery. Take that, Christian Huff. Like, dude, that is like got into absurd. You got away from so quickly.
Right.
Got away from everything that you've been talking about on your show for years. That quickly, that easily into
and he's always
I can't see myself following a God that would do that.
Right. And he also spends a lot of time saying I don't have a problem with Christians, I don't have a problem with the Bible. Oh, but by the way, the Bible stinks
and I hate God.
And I hate God.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't have a problem with God, but I hate him because he's a big fat jerk. And you know,
just hate God. You're just another.
Right. If you listen to the debate, it starts off academic, but once he's got no more academic capital,
in about 10 minutes, he's no academic capital anymore.
It's just gone.
Yeah.
Under cross-examination, it's just
really bad.
The emperor's not wearing any clothes. He goes into God bad.
Yeah.
And that's his argument. Well, you know, God stinks and I hate him. He doesn't exist, but I also hate him. I think he does acknowledge the existence of God or some sort of universal presence or what have you. But I mean,
he hates the God. He hates the God of the Bible.
He hates the God of the Bible
of the Bible that Wes Huff is defending.
Yes, right.
So he hates that God.
Right.
And Wes Huff actually acknowledged something which was really interesting in the debate too, where he said, like, when I, as a historian, I seek to debunk my own arguments.
Yeah.
I'm actually looking. Okay, this is the conclusion. What are the arguments against that conclusion? Mm-hmm. And let's study those.
Right.
That's what Wes Huff does as a historian.
Right.
But what Billy Carson does is he says, no, the Bible's false. I'm going to go all of these tribes and all these places
to
reconfirm and prove that it's not right.
And the most bizarre and outlandish story, I will believe.
Big difference.
I will believe it. I'm going to believe the most bizarre and outlandish story.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the Cirque du Soleil of arguments. Like nothing's too crazy. Just give me everything and I will accept it. You know, and what about this one from this place? Yep. And what about this one from this place? Yep. And at the end of towards the end of the discussion, Wes Huff is saying, "Hey Billy, you know, what's your criteria here? Do you just believe everything that that if it's an ancient parchment, you just believe it? Because that's what it seems like you're doing. Like you're pulling from these sources that are fakes and they're frauds, and you didn't even stop to ask.
The known fraud.
Right.
Yeah.
These are known forgeries and frauds, and you're quoting them like they're true. Like, did you even look? Did you even do the scientific method here? And then he gets offended and he walks off. He storms off. With some lame excuse of like, I gotta go. But I mean, that's when he went into God bad, right?
Right, like that nonsense about like, how do you know he's a man? It's like, dude, any basic
Right.
study of Christian background,
The Bible. Just
but
the
even
Bible.
it's like this is really basic stuff. Like
Right.
when you start to hear things that start to come into your brain where you're like, wait, I can rebut that.
Right.
Me.
Yeah. Right. Me.
Okay, we got a big problem.
Right.
This guy was in freaking Egypt for 6 months studying this
right,
stuff.
Right.
And it's now we're getting into stuff where I'm like,
Yeah.
you know, we're and the thing about Wes is he just knows his stuff. But
Yeah, right.
the way we would debate someone like Billy Carson is like, well, the I forget the book that he said where he was talking about the Codex,
A Sinaiticus.
the Sinai Bible.
Sinai Bible. Yeah.
He's saying, well, the Sinai Bible doesn't have the crucifixion in there.
Okay.
Well, take that.
Okay.
Right? The way we would debate that is like, well, what gives that credibility? It didn't happen because another book said so.
Right. Right.
You know, your whole thing is based on, well, this is written by people are fallible, that kind of thing. That's where we would go with it.
Right.
But Wes Huff is like, because he's like the most epic nerd ever to come out of Canada.
Right.
Ever. Right. Reaches back and goes, no, it's a proven forgery.
Right.
And there's not one person that thinks otherwise.
Right.
Only
right.
you.
Right. Only you. Yeah.
Right. Because you haven't read it.
Yeah.
But it later on, it just gets to like where it's like, no, God refers to himself as a he. That's why we say he.
Right.
But he's actually not male or female. This is like common knowledge.
Right, yeah,
And he's like,
right.
boy, that's convenient.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, now we're arguing like a typical like
Yeah.
dude on the street type level.
Right.
Oh, that switched quick.
Yeah, and this is after
And,
years of research and going to the places
Yeah.
and all this
You
self-aggrandizing.
have not read it. You don't know what you're talking about.
Right,
You're a
right,
fraud.
right,
and you're a
right.
liar.
Yeah.
And you think you're a big shot and you're not. And Wes was able to expose that without even being the slightest bit offensive.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's very true.
Thanking him 1,000 times for talking to me, like
Yeah,
all this
being
stuff. It's like, you
professional.
can't get nicer
Yeah.
than this.
Yeah.
And and it was I mean, praise the Lord for Wes Huff.
Yeah. Right.
It was really, really great to watch.
It was a spanking. That's what it was. It was a spanking. I mean, he just got spanked.
Yeah.
Poor
and,
guy.
And the Joe Rogan podcast too, if you get a chance to listen to Wes on there.
Yeah.
That's really good. They actually didn't get into too much of Billy Carson. Like they talk about him a little bit at the beginning. They
Yeah.
talk about him a little bit at the end.
Yeah.
This is a classic example of, was it Proverbs? One way seems right until the other comes and rebuts him.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's like this is a classic example of that.
Yeah.
Because everybody was like, wait a minute.
Right.
This is crazy. And so Billy Carson there was this other YouTube short where Billy Carson was like, yeah, I got this from the book of Toth or something.
Okay.
Right. And it says in there, blah, blah, blah. And it sounds super smart. And he's good at saying it. Right.
Right.
And then immediately right after that, 15 seconds after he says it, Wes Huff is on there, goes, yeah, the book of Toth doesn't even exist. It's not even real.
It's not even real.
It doesn't exist.
Right. Yeah.
So, but it sounded so good,
Yeah,
right, coming
right,
from Billy Carson, and it's just like, wow, it's
And there's claims made by Carson, like he could read Sumerian, and Wes Huff points out hey, listen, I've been studying ancient languages my whole professional career, and I can't
read Sumerian.
I can't read Sumerian. Do you know how much time and effort Sumerology is its own field of study, and to casually be like, oh yeah, I can read Sumerian is a claim that can't really be substantiated in the universe that we inhabit just because I read some text or something like that, or I don't know how he would justify such a claim, but that was a key, or that was an indication to Wes Huff that okay, all right, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, because nobody says that. Right, that's ridiculous.
I think that's what that exposed. I mean, mostly it was like, this guy actually has no idea what he's talking about.
Right.
None. He has not studied it.
Right.
And now Wes Huff is a super nerd.
Mm-hmm.
Thank God. Praise God for guys like this.
Yeah.
And he's actually a really interesting guy. Because we're talking about the subtexts within the main thing.
Yeah, the
right?
subplots.
Subplots. And the Joe Rogan episode, which is super interesting, I found this very interesting. How and the cool thing about Wes is how he's different from modern day Christians even. Mm-hmm. And Joe Rogan asked him about his background, and Wes Huff had a very serious. I don't know if you know about this.
Yeah.
His injury.
Yes. Yeah. You got. Yeah.
You saw that. You
Yes.
listened to the podcast, but you know the interesting thing to me about that was because Joe Rogan started leading into like what started you into Christianity.
Okay.
And he went into this. I had this. I
was paralyzed.
as close to a miraculous
Healing
as you could, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Joe Rogan with his follow-up question was like not that he was doing it maliciously, but it was kind of leading into, so that's why you're a Christian,
Oh, okay.
right?
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, wait a minute. So you're not, and I thought he's not going to be able to get him. Not that he was trying to get him,
Right.
But it was. You have to listen for it, but it's like he's not going to be able to get him on. I believe these things because I had a miraculous transformation.
Mm-hmm.
I believe these things because God revealed something to me.
Right.
Like a lot of modern day Christians are.
Yes. Right.
He said, what did that do for you in your religion, in your, and he said, at most, it just gave me appreciation for athletics.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And I thought, that's interesting. You're not going to be able to get this guy on anything, even though he had as close to a miraculous healing as you could find.
Right.
He is not going to go, that's not why he believes what he believes.
Right.
He believes because this is the evidence that points me to it.
Right,
And I thought that was a really cool
He believes it
little-
because it's true.
Yeah.
Because it's true. That's
That was a really interesting to me.
Yeah.
You're not going to, nope, that's not going to be something you're going to get him on here.
right. It's the whole thing. The whole last couple of weeks. It's just been one huge score for Christendom. It just has been. I mean, there's comments on the YouTube videos of people going, I've changed my mind. This guy.
Nobody is defending Billy Carson.
Yeah, nobody.
There is zero people out there.
Nobody. And
I would like to see who defends this guy.
And shame on you if you do, because because you're obviously not paying attention.
Yeah.
And you have a bias that's so bad that you're going to now defend people who are obvious liars and frauds and fakes.
Yep.
What he did was, claiming to be a professional, claiming to be someone who's knowledgeable, and then getting his butt kicked by somebody who actually was. And his also claim in his rebuttal video that he did later was, look at all this money I'm making. Okay, so you're making money through lying. Okay, great, excellent. So
he's like, I just got off my private jet, came back into my office.
Yeah, and shame on you.
And
Shame
how
on you.
dare you.
I hope he never gets invited anywhere
You're
else.
a bunch of 9-to-5 workers.
I hope he
I'm
becomes
not a 9-to-5 worker.
Yeah,
that kind of stuff.
I hope he becomes a pariah, and I hope the whole community, his self-made community, I hope they all reject him.
Yep.
And because right now he's heading for cult status.
Yep.
And that's his only way to go from here is to become a cult and be like, well, I'm the son of God.
He accused them of a cult. He accused them of running a cult. These two, the people that he actually was talking to, he accused of running a cult against him. It's like,
right.
Wow, bro.
Everything's a conspiracy. Okay, well, thanks everybody for listening to this episode of the Think and Reform podcast. We had a lot of fun watching this debate, and if you get the opportunity, go watch it. Yeah, it's just a really
the
great.
Joe Rogan one is really interesting.
Yeah.
They get into a lot of linguistic stuff, but you will not be not entertained. What am I saying?
Yeah.
You will be entertained.
Yes.
By listening to the whole 3 hours.
Right.
It's really good stuff.
Yeah. So thanks everyone for listening to this episode. We will see you next time. Remember, my friends, think and reform.